Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
What do guys want?
I'm so glad you asked. This is Screams After Midnight. This is a horror movie podcast. We've watched a movie, we get together, we talk about it. It's really quite that simple. And it is Werewolf Month here in the month of April 2021. We have no idea what the world's like in April 2021 because we're recording this way in advance. As the Christmas tree behind me will probably give you a hint of. But we are here today to talk about ginger snaps. There's no way we couldn't do Werewolf Month without doing a proper review of this movie. So this is the 2000 film starring Catherine Isabelle and Emily Perkins, and is the teenage girl take on werewolves, obviously. And it's a metaphor for the menstrual cycle. Let's just call it what it is. Let's just get out in the open. We're two 30-something dudes who are going to spend the next hour or whatever it may be talking about periods and metaphors for girls coming of age, and probably getting a lot of it wrong. So you have been warned in advance. So there we are. Obviously we've both seen this before. We'll start spoiler free before we go into spoilers. Is the simple tale of two sisters, one of whom is bit by a werewolf, that being Ginger, played by Catherine Isabelle, and who slowly turns, and her sister Bridget tries to find a way to save her, to stop her. But it explores a lot of stuff. It explores, coming of age stuff. Obviously the physical stuff, but also just the idea of sexuality, the idea of awakening, the idea of a beast awakening, and all that. We've done coming of age. We've done. I mean, if you remember Raw, the French movie, that was very much. Yes. I mean, a bit later in life, it was college age, but it was very much the sexual awakening being represented by cannibalistic hunger, of something that was, and the idea of repression was there. So, definitely not something that's unexplored in the horror genre. Although this did come long before Raw did, and I'm sure there's probably examples before this. I mean, maybe not. Maybe I don't think I can't think of any right now, but.
I mean, I'm sure there is, but yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head. But
yeah. Also, it's a Canadian film, which you can tell early on because there's kids playing hockey in the street. So, yes, thank you, Canada. So, Tim, what's your general feelings on ginger snaps?
I mean, I love it. It's great. Yeah, like obviously I'd seen it before, and yeah, it's a really solid indie movie, solid werewolf movie. You can, it's very easy to tell that, it's from the 2000s, and that, they probably didn't have like a super high budget, but, they just create such like, really good, interesting characters that you like to follow along. And, again, it does feel very, like the metaphor and everything like feels very fresh, and, everything. That's just a really fun movie to sit down and watch. And I think it's one that's very heavy on the two main leads who are both very interesting in their own ways, and fun to follow. And as much as it is about like maturing and puberty and stuff, I also like these kind of stories about like just like friendship. And I mean, they're two sisters, but they're also like very like close best friends. And I always think it's interesting, which I feel like you see this in horror movies, when you have like something is happening to someone, and it's like kind of causing a rift between them, which I always think is interesting. But no, I mean, it's a pretty, I'd say it's a pretty beloved cult film, so it's not really going out on a limb here saying that it's pretty good. But I enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've told this story before about how this is like one of the. Yeah, this must be one of the last films of an era for me where I discovered it on TV at like 1 in the morning, because it wasn't that long. Because this would have been a few years after it came out, because it was on like the Sci-Fi Channel like one night. But this would have been maybe 2004, 2003 at push maybe. and just like it being on, I just sort of this seems all right. I'll leave it on, and I was doing other things, but by the time it got like maybe half an hour in, I was kind of invested, and I stopped doing whatever I was doing, and I was paying attention to it. I didn't really know anything about it. I'd never heard of it before, and those days are kind of gone for a couple of reasons. One is that we don't really watch. I mean, most of us anyway don't really just browse TV channels and catch movies on them anymore. Or at least I don't. I've not done that in a long ass time. And but also just because, you know, sure, I was using the internet at the time, but I feel like times have changed significantly since that period, where now every movie coming out, like I'm hearing about movies left and right. I always seem, you know, I'm always knowing about movies before I watch them. I'm podcasts, news sites, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, there's definitely an equivalent nowadays to, you know, if you boot up a streaming site and you kind of flip through the movies and say, hey, what's this? Maybe I'll give it a shot. But yeah, I think the difference, like you're saying, is that, you know, maybe for like a casual person that doesn't, you know, pay attention to this stuff as much, you know, that they might just randomly stumble upon things. But yeah, I think, you know, people like us that are very plugged into, you know, like horror podcasts and sites and personalities and following people on social media, it's kind of impossible to, you know, like not hear about something like, you know, 6 months in advance.
This is exactly the sort of thing that, you know, would get buzz on Twitter if it like came out now. It's just, you know, like it would hear about it. And I think that's the big thing, is that back then, even if you were an enthusiast like we were, it was still easy to not know about a lot of things, just because the spread of information wasn't as, you know, rampant.
Yeah, and something like this, like, you know, I doubt this was playing in many theaters. Like, you know, it's probably like small release, if anything. So even if you did hear about it, like if you lived in like a small town somewhere, you might have not even had an option to, you know, really see it until it came to TV, or, you know, if you did like a, you know, a mail order DVD or whatever.
Yeah, so no, I love the movie a lot. It's probably my favorite werewolf movie, and you know, there's not like a ton of competition, but although a bit more than there used to be, as we talked about in the past couple of weeks. But it's, I think what I like about it is that it's got a very unique tone and like atmosphere, and its personality. I'd say personality is maybe the key word I'd use, and maybe it's just because the sisters are both kind of morbid and have this really sort of dark attitude right from the get-go. You know, the theme of murder, the visuals of violence are already kind of there. You know, the other kids make fun of them for being kind of creepy and Morticia-esque, and you know, even just the way they talk to each other about everyone else, the way they analyze the people around them, the way they analyze the other school kids, just it feels kind of unique. And I feel like when I'm watching this movie, and there's not a lot of movies that make me feel like this particular way, but I feel like I'm viewing the world through a specific lens of these two characters, which is partly the teenage girl experience, but they're also not normal teenage girls. They're very specific teenage girls. So it's you know, it's through this kind of dark, twisted view of reality. And I think then there's a lot of conversation you could have about, okay, why do they view the world this way? What are they rebelling against? And I think you get into some more of the feminine themes that come out from that side of things as well, on top of just the obvious metaphors of you know, werewolves and coming of age and the thirst for sex and violence and whatever.
Yeah, and I feel like that is, you know, obviously, even though this, you know, came out in 2000 or whatever, I feel like that's a very 90s thing, where we are starting to feel like more disillusioned, and like, you know, like I don't want to say necessarily like, you know, full goth or whatever, but you know, you are starting to see like more people in entertainment that were like, you know, the darker kids, like, you know, we were kind of moving away from like the, you know, like, oh gee shucks, like quarterback kind of person, and like, you know, like we were starting to see more like kind of like, I don't know, like nerds and you know, like kind of witty you know, like talking back to the establishment kind of people and stuff. You know, like I'm just thinking of stuff like, I don't know, like Addams Family or something, like, you know, maybe not the best example, but like,
yeah, also Addams Family from the 60s, Tim. This is a horrible example.
I'm talking about like the 90s movies though.
Okay.
Like,
all
you
right.
know what I mean? But like, you know, just kind of like stuff like that, I feel like, you know, we're seeing more and more in the 90s, which and again, you know, 2000s or whatever, but this does have like a very 90s feel, which like it starts to make me feel like a little nostalgic now. Like, not saying that the '90s was great or anything, but yeah, I did grow up there, and sometimes it is kind of interesting to see, like, I don't know, just the fashion and kind of like attitudes and stuff from around that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two leads are the strongest part of the movie, and I think the direction's really strong. I think the music's really good. I think the score is quite memorable. But I think the two leads and and not just the performances, performances are very, very good from both of them. But I think that even just the writing of those two characters is what makes this feel so special and unique. And
Sure.
just the sort of dark sense of humor the movie kind of has to how it approaches things, and how they even get out of certain situations at certain points, because they're known for having like fake dead things lying around, so they're able to like disguise
Yeah.
things later, because it's like, oh well, we're used to seeing like severed limbs and stuff lying around the house because our daughters are crazy. Like there's stuff like that going on. But I find their performances extremely entertaining to watch. They're very engrossing. They feel fully fleshed out, and it's funny you mentioned it's quite, and it's quite cheap, but it is technically quite cheap. I actually think it never really suffers from it. It feels like
No, yeah.
it does a great job with the money it has. It feels like it aims for an atmosphere that it can achieve, and it feels grimy and small in a way that it feels like it fits the small town, very personal story it's telling. There's actually only one scene in the whole movie where I feel, for some reason, I feel just the qualities of like a shitty direct-to-video movie for some reason, just in one specific scene, come out. And it's not, I can kind of talk about it, but there's a scene where someone else who's been bitten is attacking a kid,
Okay. Yeah.
and Bridget sort of stumbles into the scene, and he sort of threatens her briefly. And I don't know what it is about the scene. I don't know if it's just 'cause it's shot on like in a field in broad daylight, which is a staple of like cheapo movies. I don't know if it's because it goes into this weird Dutch angle
Yeah.
as he says something like sort of threatening, or maybe it's a combination of that and his fairly hammy performance, because he's not one of the better actors in the movie. I mean, he was all right when he was just being a little shit, but now that he's sort of starting to turn into a werewolf, he's kind of he's hamming it up. He's chewing the scenery a bit. And then a combination of all those things, I was like, oh, I just got like a weird vibe of some shitty direct-to-video thing from around this time.
Yeah.
That scene aside, though, I never really felt a problem with it. Even the werewolf effects, well, have limitations. They don't, I think, hinder the movie in any way.
Yeah, like it. Like I wouldn't say it's like the best looking werewolf stuff, but at the same time, I think because you're so invested in the story and the characters that it doesn't really hamper it that much. Like it fits for the atmosphere and stuff that they've kind of created for that.
Yeah, it's better than late phases werewolves, so I'll say that much.
Yeah.
I'll say that. And there's a long time without actual werewolves, and that's the funny thing, because you're so into the two characters. I don't think you're ever missing or like sort of like get to the werewolf like transformation already.
Right.
I don't think you ever feel that in this movie. You're too busy, because it sort of plays with the idea that she has like a thirst for blood and violence long before she's ever transformed completely into a werewolf. So there's a lot of that going on throughout, and like how they try to cover that up and yada yada yada. So no, I as well as every time I watch this, and it's like the couple of scenes at the start, the first scene sort of like gives you the over the top dark humor, with this mum who finds like the dead dog in her backyard, and then out walks Bridget and just kind of like complains that there's too much noise as she's holding like like a gas can, and she's got like some rope or something, and she's she's sort of slouched. She's got this like cardigan on that's far too big for her, and she's just like, "Shut up, Raymond," whatever the dog's name is that's like barking next to her, and it just immediately gives you like this weird offbeat vibe. You're like, okay. And then she goes to see her sister, and Ginger's like got a knife to her wrist, and she's talking about the best way to kill herself, and they're having this conversation like it's like normal, like, oh yeah, nah, I'm going to do it this way, and she's like, nah, but you should do this and you should do that. And it turns out, of course, that it's revealed that what they're actually doing is they're for a project for school, they're taking a bunch of photographs of each other in suicide-like poses using makeup and stuff like that. But it immediately just gives it this tone where you're like, okay, we've entered into a dark world. It presents teenage life as this miserable, and arguably teenage life is miserable, but this like literally miserable experience of just this dark depravity where there's no escape, and they're trapped by the confines of that around them. So, and there's definitely some stuff of that as well. There's definitely some stuff of them trying to rebel against the society norms around them. It comes up a few times in the film.
Yeah, I feel like it's an attitude that you don't really see that much of anymore. Like, I don't know, like growing up there was a very, a very kind of dark sense of like, like, hey, like things really suck, and like I don't know, like our parents' generations like kind of ruined the planet, and like, yeah, and it's stuff that you can kind of see like is still going on today and stuff. And like I do remember, like, yeah, there was like this very kind of like, I don't know, moody atmosphere of it, and like, there's a lot of like the same problems still exist, but I feel like, I don't know, the things you see like with kids and stuff today, it seems to be like a much more positive thing. Like, it's less like we're screwed, let's just be dark and make suicide pacts, and it's more like, how can we fix this stuff? Like, let's try to fight for a better tomorrow and enact change and stuff, which is the better way to go about it. But yeah, I feel like this is kind of tapping into something of the time that you don't really see as much of anymore.
Yeah, and of course there's the to go along with that, the idea that they're resisting becoming normal, and
right,
and not so much that they've intentionally done this, but the idea that somehow also led to them avoiding having periods so far, because Ginger gets her first period after she's bit by the werewolf, and she's quite old to have her first period. Like, this is pushing up there. The idea that part of the problem is, and maybe part of the message of the movie is resisting growing up and rebelling and repressing things as much as this just makes everything more difficult on you. And because it's a movie, that's turned up to 11, and it's vicious werewolf killing people, and no one's safe. From the fallout. So yeah, I think it. But just to go back to the two main characters, I think so many low budget horror movies we'll watch and we'll talk about how just sort of bland and nothing the characters are. In this movie, within like 5 minutes, has already gave me two characters that are very interesting, unique, captivating to kind of listen to, just to see what they're going to say and do, and see where it's going. But then we watch other stuff and movies that aren't even necessarily that bad, but like we watch, I'll pick a movie from the last year, but we watch like 1BR, or we watch well, I don't know, it's hard to remember all these okay but not good or not great movies, but there's so many main characters who are just kind of like, they're kind of a likable in a real world way.
Yeah, they're like very neutral. It's like, okay, this is a good person, maybe they're struggling with like finances a little bit, but yeah, they seem like pretty likable. But I mean, yeah, and some I mean, not to say that these characters aren't likable by any means, they're very likable, but like sometimes like that neutral, just kind of, I'm just a good person, like that's kind of just a very boring character.
Yeah, and I mean, being a good person can be interesting if it's a good person who's surrounded by shitheads, and there's like strength shown because they're somehow being good despite everything around them, or something like. But they can have something. I feel like there's a blandness to so many like characters, especially in directed streaming movies and directed video movies, and arguably the bigger mainstream stuff too. But I'm watching this, and like within single digits of the minutes, I'm invested. I'm into what they're doing. I'm into who these characters are before even either of them are bit. Just them standing at the side of the hockey pitch, talking about like the other kids, and talking about it in a weird way that teenagers wouldn't normally talk about anything. Like sort of analyzing them in this sort of macabre way, where they're, I don't know. I can't even describe it. It's just that, but that's kind of the point, is that it's unique, and it's this point of view that just sticks out. So, and yeah, it does come off a little bit I don't know, try hard, but not in a way where the movie feels like it's trying hard. In a way that the characters themselves are kind of tryhards. They're kind of trying hard to be this edgy and different and gothy and emo, and we're not going to be normal like everyone else. It does come off as this immature, we're going to be different from everything else. But it feels true to who they are. It feels true to what the characters that the movie's trying to present to us.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think points were points to do. I mean, as for horror movie stuff, there's kills, there's severed limbs, there's one or two good deaths.
Yep.
It hides a lot, I think, particularly to not have not to expose the werewolf effects too much, and I think that's perfectly valid. That's a smart choice by smart filmmakers who know what they can and cannot show.
Sure.
Because how many movies are like, nah, we'll just do this shitty CG thing, even though we clearly can't afford proper CG.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, and it is mostly practical effects as well.
Yeah.
They've got a prosthetic wolf. They've got all these things.
Sorry, I blanked out for a second because I was trying to think of like something I watched recently that had really bad effects. I was like, what was it? And I was like, oh yeah, it was the Creepshow Christmas special, which the like some of the makeup effects and stuff like were good, but there's kind of like this big fight scene and there's like a lot of people with guns shooting, and oh my god, the CGI blood is so bad. Like we could probably do a better job. Like it looks like it's literally just, I don't know, someone paid like $5 to just have like little digital red spots, like put on the thing. Yeah, that's I think that might be one of my biggest like pet peeves out of like CGI and digital stuff. Like I hate digital blood. It looks so bad and distracting.
Yeah. I pretty much agree. I can't. I'm sure sometimes when you mix it with some real blood, like if you're just doing it to add to like the core of whatever's happening, but when you just do nothing but CGI blood in a scene, it's just kind of like, this looks like shit. What are we doing? Yeah. It's very obvious, very distracting.
And it's like I know how like it'd be really expensive to get like a full on prosthetic werewolf that can move its jaws and run and leap. So I understand why you might use CGI for that, like in a movie or whatever. But like, I don't know, do like squibs and blood packets really cost that much? Like, even if you're low budget, like, is that hard of an expense? I don't know.
I think the part where they're saving more money is not having to clean the set between takes.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe where the appeal comes from for a lot of these movies. But that is that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else spoiler free that I want to talk about.
And not just the like obviously the two main leads, are the the best characters and the ones you want to follow. But I also really do like the parents. I think they're very funny. And especially the mom. Like the dad really doesn't get much to do, but I think that in of itself is funny.
Dad's got a couple of funny lines. Mimi Rogers, who plays the mum, who I've seen in a few things. She's pretty good. And she's so different from the kids, which is really funny actually, because the parents seem like this really normal, like middle class couple, and then like, honey, clean your corpse off the driveway, please.
Yeah. I think like what makes me laugh is that like how like loving, but she's still like invested in the children. Like I think the easy thing to do would be like to have parents that are just like so divorced from their kids because they're so different that they're just like, I don't want anything to do with them, like you're crazy and weird and stuff. And like I love that like she it feels like she wants to bond with them over their weird stuff, but also like absolutely doesn't get it and doesn't like it. But and then like I think like towards the end of the movie, she like starts making some wild decisions, which we'll get to in spoilers. But I think that stuff is funny.
Yeah, it was cracking me up as well. I feel sorry for the dad in a lot of ways, but we'll get to why.
Yes.
We'll get to why in spoilers. I want to mention that their bedroom, because they share a bedroom, right? They've got like a twin room, and it's a very weird location because the house itself is quite a normal kind of big typical family house. You see the kitchen, you see the living room, you see some of the other rooms in the house, but they're like in the basement
like the
or something.
basement?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, but it's like a really crappy stone walls. It's not like homely at all. I mean, they've got it dressed up. They've got like some sparkly beads like from the ceiling and stuff, but it's a really grungy. And I don't know if this is like, was this their choice? Did they want to be in the grungy basement?
It feels like it might have been.
I love the idea that the parents had like two really girly pink rooms all like made up for them upstairs, but like, no, we're gonna go to the basement and be miserable and talk about death and stuff. But yeah, okay, so I'll thank our Patreon producers at the time of rating. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They're our Patreon producers right now. So thank you to them. It means they're $20 or more at patreon.com/MailedFuzzTV, where you can go and support us for as little as $1 per month. If you want to support the show and keep everything coming and let us grow and all that sort of stuff, for that $1 per month, you get access to the library of bonus episodes that we've done. That we've typically been doing once per month. They're on pause just now because Tim's going on paternity leave and they'll be back sometime in late spring. 2021, that is, just in case you're watching this much later and you're thinking that what, they're not back till. Because just imagine someone's watching this in like 2023 and they're like, oh god, I'll sign up to Patreon, but not now. I'll wait until spring because whatever. So go and have a look. He's got early access, of course, at the $5 tier to all the episodes by a day. And so on and so on. So go have a look and see if you're interested in helping keep everything coming. You can also hit the like button on YouTube as a free way of supporting us, and that helps us out a lot too. So thank you very much. So full spoilers from this point on for Ginger Snaps. So yeah, where to begin here? So I mean, the actual plot of the movie is like we said, it's Ginger becoming a werewolf, and that kind of being a metaphor for coming of age and getting her first period, which she literally does get, and the idea that like boys are starting to notice her even before the werewolf bite, like when they show their death like slideshow in class, like the very year 2000 douchebag is very impressed with Ginger and is staring at her chest and all sorts. Because apparently in high school you can just watch the girls' gym team practice with for something, no one's going to question anything while you're just sitting there watching that. But go on.
Yeah, and then and you mentioned before like about her getting her period and stuff, which I think they kind of have the idea that it's also the period that might even have attracted the werewolf, like when they're running around, it's like because I think they mentioned that about like like sometimes wild animals like smell blood and it attracts them or whatever.
Yeah, at least one of the best shots in the movie, I think, is when it just cuts to the store and Bridget's just standing in front of all the tampons, not knowing what to buy and just kind of feeling awkward about the whole thing. And part of the movie, because of the relationship, is very much the idea that her sister's leaving her behind, because her sister's maybe starting to care about the fact that boys are looking at her and maybe has a thirst for this kind of thing now, and she's going to get left behind and not be paid attention to.
And it's and probably important to note too that like Ginger is older, but they are like in the same grade because I think they say Bridget skipped a grade. So it's not even like they really have like their own friends. It's like, they're actually, because they are in the same grade together, so they basically just will kind of stick around each other and hang out with each other. So it's not even like she really has like other friends or anything like in the class too.
Yeah, and I do think the scene, because they're out looking, because there's like a sort of bully girl who like picks a fight with them on the hockey team, and they want to. I can't remember if they were actually going to kill her dog or if they were just going to scare her by making it look her dog was attacked, but they were looking for her dog, and this is when the werewolf attacks Ginger. And I think the actual attack itself is, I think, really well handled given how much they had to hide, because it feels quite visceral. It feels like there's a lot of screaming, a lot of blood, and they go running, and of course there's a van that hits the werewolf, killing. Because that's one of the things about this movie is that the werewolves aren't like super unstoppable killing machines. That makes sense, because otherwise it'd be very hard to have a resolution with these teenagers who can barely fight. Like, it's not. So, but this van kills the werewolf that bit her, Um, and this character Sam, who's driving the van, becomes kind of the third main character because Bridget ends up going to him because he's basically a drug dealer, but because of that he knows his way around like botany and like chemistry, so he ends up helping trying to like solve the werewolf problem. But so a lot of this is that Ginger's starting to sort of come out of her shell. She's starting to, we get the classic walking down the hallway in slow motion as like everyone's heads are turning and going, oh my god, she's super hot now. She has this confidence about her, which again, like this idea of like coming of age and becoming more sexually confident and becoming a bit more, less sheltered, less shy, more commanding the situation. Because when I mentioned earlier that it kind of like tackles a little bit at times about challenging the establishment, I think one of the big examples of that is when she does go with the douchebag who's been kind of hitting on her, and they end up in the car together. Like he kind of like tells her to calm down because she's like going too fast. We got all night. Just sit back and relax. Which I cringed a little bit when he said that. But she's like she kind of keeps going. He's like, how about you sit back and relax? And he's like, hey, who's the guy here? And she just like f's him up. And like, and they do have sex because I wasn't actually sure if they had sex or if she was just going to like basically maul him at that point. But the rest of the movie makes it pretty clear that they did have unprotected sex because that's how he caught it. That's how he has. So I don't think there's meant to necessarily be a straight up like STD like message in here, but it's hard not to think
a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard not to think about it a little bit because he did catch it that way.
And like while her kind of transformation seems like more wolf-like and empowering, like his transformation does seem more like an STD version of that, where
the STD version of that,
because like he doesn't like seem like he's as like in charge and like powerful and stuff from his stuff. Like it seems like it's affecting him like pretty poorly. That's because that's what you're getting with before when you talk about like that one scene where he just looks like he doesn't look more wolf-like. He looks like he just kind of has like this really bad rash or something on his face.
I mean, I'm not necessarily sure if I agree or disagree with this, but do you think there's like maybe a slight message there? Going with the metaphor that the wolf is like initiating puberty in a weird way, that boys are kind of a mess going through puberty until they even out at the end.
I can see that,
and girls handle it better. I mean, I'm not so sure if that's even accurate, but like I could see it.
I can see it, yeah. I can I can see an argument for it. Like, maybe it's not specifically what they're going for, but I think there's a case to be made there for sure. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, on average, there's extreme cases on either end from everyone, of course, but
sure.
So all the stuff with like in the middle of the movie of like Ginger like turning, and because she kind of like really separates from Bridget at one point, and Bridget's getting really frustrated that her sister's kind of abandoned her. But then after the sex scene, after she comes back and she's she's killed a dog, and she's got blood all down her, she's scared enough that she starts to trust Bridget again, and Bridget's trying to help her, and lies to Sam that she's the one who's been bit herself, so that he'll help her. I think this might be the movie that taught me the word lycanthrope, because there's a point when he first says, "Oh, I hit a lycanthrope," and she's like, "I know what that means." And I'm like, that's maybe the movie that taught me what the word lycanthrope was. Maybe in the first place I heard it.
Sure.
At least the first place that I heard it and it stuck, where I remembered it being mentioned.
Yeah.
But I think the build in the middle, and like Ginger trying to control herself and like hold it in, and then losing her shit on the bully, because she ends up like basically kicking the shit out of the bully at a hockey practice when she pushes Bridget, and this leads to them, or at least to her killing her dog, Ginger that is. And when the bully comes over to confront them at their house, saying she wants her dog back, that she suspects them of foul play, she doesn't say it in so many nice words, because she really is quite awful. That's the thing. For as weird and morbid as the two lead characters are, all of the other kids we meet are all complete dirtbags. They're all the worst.
For sure.
Which honestly feels very realistic for teenagers, especially in this time period. But I always I'd forgotten how this death went. It surprised me again.
Yeah, what's weird about it is there's so much more elaborate and gory deaths in the movie, but for some reason this is the one that like hits the hardest.
And it has nothing to do with werewolves.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably, if the scene continued without her having this accident, maybe Ginger would have just like slashed her and bit her and whatever. But she actually slips on like some milk or something, and she basically slips back the way, and the back of her head hits the corner of the kitchen counter. Oof. And it is brutal. It feels really violent, and it's one of these things where sometimes the simple blunt thing is way more visceral. I always think of Christopher Nolan's first film, Following, where he talked about how the villain in that movie uses a hammer instead of a gun because it was so low budget they couldn't get a gun, or if they could, but they couldn't. Like, if they ever fired it, it wouldn't sound right. It wouldn't look good. So I was like, no, a hammer is a hammer. It won't look fake, and it's actually kind of more intimidating because there's something really violent feeling about someone just swinging a hammer at you.
For sure.
So, in a similar kind of vein, okay, werewolf bites and like maulings are cool, but it's really big in like horror movie spectacle. There's something about just hitting your head in the corner or something like that. It's just
especially it's like that specific angle where it's like, oh yeah, like like human bodies are not supposed to like be hit there or bend there. Sometimes it's like woof.
Put that on. Put that on like a medical journal. Just a quote in the front. Human bodies aren't supposed to be hit or bend there.
Yeah. And then and this is and I love like the follow up to the scene too, where it's like the parents are coming home, and so they have to like quickly hide the body, and for some reason I always like it stands out to me when the dad is kind of like looking a little bit like too hard at it, like he's like, is that really one of their like art projects? And
we should mention the way they sort of like hide it, because the body's lying there and there's blood like everywhere, is that Ginger just like sort of lies down in the blood and pretends that this is one of their art project things, and even licks the blood and goes, "Corn syrup, you want some, Dad?" As if he's going to lick it off her finger.
Ugh,
like a weirdo.
Like even if it was corn syrup, like that's still really gross.
It's still gross. Yeah. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's like on the floor. It's on your hand. Like, why would anyone want to? No.
I think like just corn syrup in general. Like I don't think that's like tasty, right?
Which actually leads to the joke that you started the podcast with, which is they've had the body in the freezer, and the mum goes to put something in the freezer. It's one of those deep freezers that you open from the top, and the body's sitting in the freezer. It's actually like far too frozen already for her. It's only been there for like 5 minutes, so I'm not sure why it's already like a popsicle, but
that's
whatever. But she opens it and she hasn't looked down yet, and to distract her, Bridget just goes, "Mum, what do boys want?" Because she knows that if she asks her for some motherly advice, she'll be so over the moon that she's been asked this serious question by her daughter that she's going to not pay attention to anything, and she will sit down. And we cut ahead, but presumably Bridget and Ginger had to sit and listen to a whole speech about what boys want.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, the mom like just gets so excited, and like not just that they're like, you get the sense that they're probably not like too often like happy to see her, want to like sit down and talk to her, but to especially do it about like a big life lesson thing that she can really impart on them. And
which actually leads to maybe my favorite line. This is like this is the dad sort of like becomes the low key like MVP in the movie, because there's a scene. It's when they're disposing of the body outside, and it cuts up to the parents' bedroom, and the mum's like looking through a magazine looking for like, I'm gonna get some more like teenage daughter tips and hints and how to talk to them and and the dad's kicking like, I'm not sure about this art project stuff. It's a bit unhealthy or something like that. And she's like, shut up. Like, they're being normal teenage girls. And he just hits back with, then why are they so suddenly interested in what you have to say? And I'm like, damn, that was such a good part.
The dad is like, I think the dad is very funny because he's just like, it just feels like he's just like beaten down.
Yeah.
And like, just like that. Yeah, he's like so quiet and outspoken. So it is like, like you said, he's very like low key, and it just feels funny like whenever someone does like remember he's there or has like a line or something about him.
Yeah, which is why when the mum finds I mean, they find the two fingers that were left behind by accident from the girl, and she assumes it's just fake. But she finds like one of the dead dogs, and is like, oh. So when she's with Bridget later, she says, "Look, I'll turn the gas on. We'll set the house on fire, and we'll move somewhere and start over just as girls." And I'm like, wait, what? Why? Wait, what? And again, I think there is some commentary in here because Bridget says, what about Dad? And she says, oh, he'll just blame me. They all will. And while it kind of just comes off as kind of like a really weird, dark little joke, I do think there's a little bit of commentary in there when she says, she's basically saying why she wants to move and start again and not have it found out that one of her daughters has killed a dog or a number of dogs, is because she thinks that she'll be blamed as the mother, that the dad won't be blamed. The dad will join everyone else and blame her. So, I mean, right or wrong, it's definitely given us the impression that she feels this pressure of society as a mother to perform up to a certain standard, and that she's failed for this. So she's, looking out for her daughters in some weird way. It's kind of weird how the parents sort of disappear from the movie after this, and we never get their reaction to anything. Pretty much.
It's
past this point.
a little strange. Yeah.
Because the solution to everything comes from a flower. It's not quite wolfsbane, but it's like a distant cousin to it.
Monkwood or something.
Yeah. That will cure the werewolf. Because silver doesn't work in this movie. The full moon doesn't even have much of an effect. Because the transformation is just slowly happening. It's not really fussed about the full moon, which honestly, I'm not that fussed about, in the sense that having watched a number of werewolf movies this month and how much they all obsess about talking about full moons, it's actually kind of refreshing to watch one that's not constantly going, full moon, this, beware the moon, that, the moon, da. But which is, it's kind of funny actually, in the sense that because of the metaphor and the whole idea of her getting her first period, and she's told, I'll give or take every 28 days for the next 30 years. It's kind of funny that that's really pointed out, but the actual typical werewolf trope of, you become a werewolf once a month, is actually left behind. It's almost like it feels like it doesn't need to do that because it's already using this metaphor so heavily.
It's true.
So, I don't know. Some thoughts. So, Bridget locks that's not Isabel, sorry, I'm just the actor's name. Locks Ginger in the house, and she's starting to really transform. She's got like ridges in her head now, and she's... by the way, is it just me? I was disgusted every time we see the tail. The tail that's growing,
for sure,
like really upset me. Every time I watch this movie and I see like the little stub, and then later on when it's actually like sticking out of her underwear, like every time I'm just like, that's just really disgusting. I don't know why this bothers me so much, but it is.
And when she's trying to like cut it off, it's like,
yeah,
it's very squirmy. I do think it is kind of funny, like, towards the end of the movie when they're going to like the big party and stuff, and everyone is kind of looking at Ginger and being like, oh, what, man, like, good costume, looking so hot and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm very freaked out by the way she looks. Like, it's very like pointy and has like, like these kind of like big ridges like on her face and stuff. And like
she tries to seduce Sam when she goes to see him, and she sort of like undoes her shirt, but she has those ridges all up her stomach as well, and it's just like,
were those like extra nipples on her chest?
They might have been, yeah.
That's I'm never quite sure, but it's like, her like body is kind of like, it's almost like kind of like moving and stuff like a little bit, and like I always there are these things on there, I'm like, I think those are supposed to be nipples, which is kind of funny if it's like you're becoming more wolf-like, so you're getting more nipples.
Yeah, you get 6 or 8 nipples, however many nipples a wolf.
But yeah, it's definitely not sexy though.
No. Which. And again, maybe even there's something there that she gets really sexy, but then as the movie goes on and progresses, she gets more monstrous, like beyond that point, and it stops being sexy and it starts being something else entirely. Like, I think there's maybe even like some themes you can read into that. The film's definitely rich in that stuff. It's definitely rich in like thinking about these ideas and what is it saying about coming of age? What is it saying about the female experience, particularly at that age, and what is it saying about all these different things? So. I mean, all that stuff's good. I mean, as far as like the back chunk of the movie goes, the cure does work. As mentioned, Bridget meets the other guy who was turning that Ginger had sex with, and she actually uses the one dose of the cure on him. They can get more, you know, because by the way, the reason why they have the flower because Sam was going to have to grow it and it was going to take a while. Turns out that like the mum just buys it at like a thrift store or something like that, or just comes home and says, "Hey, I bought some flowers today." It's like, huh, these happen to be exactly what we need to save Ginger. What a coincidence. Oh dear. But so there's a sort of race to try and make more of it. But unfortunately Ginger's too far gone, and they have her like knocked out in the back of the van. They try to drive to their house to get the rest of the flowers. But Ginger fully transforms, and the last like 10 minutes they're in the house. Ginger's like creeping around the house as a werewolf. Sam is killed. If I actually I sort of laugh because we see him get pulled out of a door and like a lot of like screaming and blood. And again, it feels very visceral and animalistic, which is good because that's kind of how a werewolf kill should feel. But it's mostly off camera. But when Bridget runs into him when she's creeping around to try to like, you know, find her sister to like stab her with the syringe, like I described, or the way I felt when I saw Sam, because he's still kind of breathing for like a little bit, is that he's got the Miles Dyson breathing. And if you don't know what I mean by that. In Terminator 2, when Miles Dyson is about to die, spoilers, okay. And he's holding the trigger for the explosives that are in the Dyson, the Cyberdyne building. He's doing this thing where he's sort of like, and he's sort of like breathing really heavily and bobbing up and down. It's not quite as strong as Dyson's, but it made me think of it. So he gets the Dyson breathing scene.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's always kind of like it's kind of like disturbing because it feels like they've like really lost control and their body's just desperately trying to like gasp in air to survive. Where I feel like a lot of the time the other thing you get is kind of like, you know, like the more like calmed, relaxed version of it where people just like which is like I don't know, that feels like a little bit more like soothing and like I don't know, like a bit more at peace and stuff versus the other one like feels like so frantic. It's kind of like, ooh, that's gonna suck.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's maybe something to be said. I mean, we kind of mentioned that the parents disappear from the movie. I do wonder, and they're so oblivious to what's going on with their daughters. Even when the mum finds the dog, she doesn't really know what's happening. And I do think that may be quite intentional, actually, because the idea that ultimately, you know, going through this change, coming of age, is something you do alone. It's not something that your parents can really help with. They can give you advice, they can tell you about their experience, but ultimately, it doesn't really help that much. You just kind of have to go through it. You just kind of have to go through the changes. So I think that's something the film does intentionally as well, and why the parents do feel so oblivious to everything, and they're just kind of, you know, outside of the one random moment where the mum's like, yeah, let's just burn the house down and start fresh somewhere. Oh dear. Now some great sequencing though is there's like a sort of standoff between Bridget and werewolf Ginger, and she sort of like is hiding. I love that it ends in their bedroom because we you know, we haven't maybe emphasized this in the review so much, but we do continually keep coming back to this bedroom throughout the film, and it really feels like their hub, their base. So the fact that the final shot of the movie is like, you know, the dead werewolf between the two beds and Bridget hugging her, because when Ginger jumps at her, she just instinctively stabs her with the knife she's holding instead of the syringe. So Ginger unfortunately dies.
And we didn't really mention it too much before, but like another kind of recurring thing in the movie is like they have this pact where they keep saying that they're, you know, basically gonna like either get out of there or like die by, do they say like die by 16 or something like that? Or
I don't know if it was 16 because I think Ginger's already just like older than that, but yeah.
Or I guess just basically then they're just gonna kill themselves if they don't like get out of their life or the suburbs or whatever. So they kind of have this pact that they keep coming to, and kind of like and ends up, you know, being what happens in the end. At least to Ginger.
To Ginger, yeah. Because Bridget sort of like lies on her, she's breathing slowly, and then the breathing stops, and then the main theme kicks in. It's, you know, it's a really good ending. The visual of like just like again in this dingy little bedroom with the two beds side by side, like and them in between it is really strong visual. that sums up the movie. And I think one of the things that happens as well, which is very important for the sequel, which, you know, I'm sure we'll come back to the sequels, you know, so in the not too distant future, is that Bridget, to try and convince Ginger when she's going pretty far off the deep end that she's on her side and she wants to help her, she like cuts her own palm, she cuts Ginger's palm, and she mixes their blood. So Bridget, towards the end of the movie, is infected with the werewolf curse, and I think again for the metaphor, this makes a whole lot of sense that inevitably Bridget was going to have to go through this too. If the werewolf is going to be the metaphor for getting their period and coming of age and going through that period of their life, then the little sister had to go through it too eventually. Now, I don't think the movie needs a sequel. I think the idea that she's taking on that burden that'll happen off screen is enough. We don't need, you know, that's fine. So I think that works really well.
I do like the wait, I forget if it's the second one or the third one, but isn't one of them called Ginger Snaps Back?
That's yeah. So the second one's just a follow-up that follows the plot. I've never seen the third one, but the third one is basically, I think, the first movie, but it's set in like olden times. So I've never seen the third one, so I'll be actually curious to get to that and see how it is.
I haven't seen it either. I like the title though.
Yeah, I think what I like about that is that they basically came up with some sort of weird premise, because like we really want Catherine Isabel back, because the second movie was really lacking Catherine Isabel. Oh, let's just do the movie again at a different time period. We'll do like a weird anthology sort of style thing.
Interesting.
Sure. I mean, yeah. If you're going to tackle it from a feminine perspective, there is a lot of doors that open by then setting it in an older time period where, you know, things are even worse in a lot of ways. So. I get it.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Like it always seems like, you know, a bit of a stretch, like to be like, oh, hey, you know, because I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to be completely unrelated, but I thought I looked at the premise before and it said like this, it follows their ancestors, which I mean, if that's the case, and it's like, all right, so your ancestors looked exactly like you and also had to deal with a werewolf. Like, it's a bit of a stretch, but also it's kind of like, well, who cares? It's a movie.
Yeah, whatever at that point. I mean, I think just take the original on its own, and then the sequels are optional add-ons if you want to, you know, go down some more stuff. But, yeah, I think the movie is super impressive. It's a really like strongly confident, atmospheric, strong character piece about sisterhood, about the teenage, you know, girl experience, you know, obviously turned up to 11 because it's a horror movie and it's going to take it and run with the metaphor and do all these things, and like, you know, like say the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, take the real thing and then like say, okay, so, you know, high school feels like hell. It's, you know, high school's literally on a hellmouth now. The idea being that going through puberty is horrible and monstrous, and you feel like you're changing and going through a metamorphosis. Here, literally, here it is in a werewolf movie.
Yeah,
you know, makes some sense. And hell, even going with the themes of like what society expects of them. After Ginger has her sex scene with well, that's not really a sex scene. You don't really see the sex, but after she has sex with the douchebag, you know, one of the things she says to Bridget is that, you know, he's off telling people that he got laid, and, you know, he's just a guy, so that's fine, but I'm now the lay, and she kind of talks about that. So these subjects do kind of get sprinkled in through the film and the dialogue as well. So it's reinforced throughout. It never feels like it strays from the thematic points that it's sticking to or it's trying to make. It's very focused. It's well paced. There's very little to fault, I think, in terms of what it's aiming for.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, would you like to rate the film then, Tim?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that like I've seen this like a ton. Like, this is probably my maybe like third time watching it, but every time I watch it, I always have a blast. I mean, it's just a, it's a terrific werewolf movie. Like you said, like we love. Well, I mean, I love werewolves, but yeah, there's not. I think there's more good movies than you do, but there are still a handful. Like it's not like vampires or zombies where you just have this glut of like really good movies and stuff. Like so this definitely deserves to be talked about anytime someone's talking about the best werewolf movies. This is easily. I wouldn't go as far to say it's my number one like you did, but it's definitely up there. The obviously the two main leads are great. To the point where it's like it's always great when you see him in something else. It's like, oh hey, it's the girls from Ginger Snaps. I've been rewatching Supernatural so Bridget pops up in there a few times, so that's always fun. And but no, I mean it's it's a good horror movie. It's it's a pretty blatant metaphor, but it works. It has a lot to say. It has great characters, and and then it doesn't skimp on the horror though. Like the like I think like the werewolf effects I don't think are the best, but I think they do work for the movie and the tone, and like you said, they do use them sparingly enough that I think it works really well. So I'm gonna give it an 8. It's very good. I like it. Be interested to see the sequels. I don't think I've really heard too much about them, so I'm assuming they're not great, but I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yeah, I was just looking there actually. Emily Perkins is 4 years older than Catherine Isabel. That's pretty funny. So no, I like this movie a lot. One of the things I forgot to mention, I thought of it as you were talking there, is I love the teacher. When they showed her like the slideshow at the start with all the scary like all the murders and stuff, and he just has this look of shock horror in his face, and he sort of like beats around the bush. But one of the things that he says that I loves is he says to the class, he phrases it like a question. He's like, "Well, I was very disturbed by that, wasn't I?" And I'm like, why are you asking? Like, I don't know, the way he phrases his lines just really crack me up. I mean, it's probably on the script rather than the actor, obviously, but I just the way it's phrased just really makes me laugh. If anything, I could have used more of him in the script. He does die, by the way, as does a janitor, but he kind of glossed over the all deaths. But there's a couple more kills. So as far as rating goes, I'm probably going to slap this with an 8.5. I think it's an exceptionally strong film. It's definitely of its time, and it feels like this grungy little low budget movie. But for me, this is an example. Whenever we watch a low budget movie from these days and we say it's really bland and why do they all feel the same, this is one of the movies where I look at and go, this is why I'm angry at them, because you can clearly do it. You can make a low budget horror movie,
sure. Yeah.
and you can have it feel unique and have it feel like it's got a personality and have it feel like a real movie that's not just like off a factory line of similar ideas. So no, Ginger Snaps is very, very, very good. So there you go. So that about does that. So if you made it this far in the review, put the word just put
corn syrup.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Corn syrup. There you go. That's probably better than I was going to come up with. So yeah, put corn syrup in the description. I'm going to make Tim do his pose for the thumbnail. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, pause. All right, you're going to do that again, but you're going to bring your elbow in so it's not cut off the side. There you go. There you go. Perfect.
I'm snapping.
I get that. You're snapping. So I'll just.
I should have just like snapped halfway through the review and just started yelling. Really funny.
So just glancing at the IMDb user reviews, as we often do here at the end. So this is just an 8 out of 10 review. I just like the title of this one though. It says a teenage werewolf in Canada. I appreciate the pun.
Funny.
I appreciate the reference. That's all I'm saying. Not a lot of funny ones here because people really like this movie, and it's a good movie. So you don't tend to get as juicy, hot takes in the titles with these ones. But what's this one? 4 out of 10 from fella_shibby from the 14th of January 2020. So this is a pretty new review. This is just from earlier this year. At the time of recording. By the time you're seeing this, it'll be over a year old. 4 out of 10. Pretty bland and boring by today's standards. I'm sorry. Do you not like character development? Yeah. Do you not like plot progression and things happening? Do you just want flashing lights all the time?
Sorry if like characters aren't constantly talking about Twitter and TikTok and stuff, but
oh, I love that. Yeah, like if this was made now, would there be like constant like would all their photos they're doing would they be for Instagram?
Probably.
They'd have like a goth following.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. So yeah. Ginger Snaps, a howling good time. I see what they did there. That's from 2008. So no, yeah, lots of positive vibes. Mostly 7, 8s, and 9s, out of 10s. And yeah, there you go. So, Ginger Snaps, very, very good. Of course, you can like and subscribe, as we mentioned earlier, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV as well. Catch us on Twitter at Screams Midnight for updates and shenanigans, and especially now with Tim on leave. There's still episodes every week, of course, but if you want the hottest updates from Tim, they'll happen on Twitter at Screams Midnight.
Probably.
If
I have time.
He's just going to a cocoon. He's just going to be in his den of fatherhood for a while and not talk to anyone. Yeah, right. There's going to be all sorts of weird photos. You're going to have the baby like riding one of the dogs, like on the dog's back, and there'll be all sorts of weird shit.
Most likely.
Yes. Well, you made a birthday cake for your dog the other day and posted a photo of that.
Hey, what can we say? We love our dogs. Your cats are okay.
I don't know if I like this favoritism, this anti-cat attitude that's happening. But yes. So, there you go. That is what Screws After Midnight. So we got one more werewolf movie left. Although, we actually might have like a bit of overtime. There might be a 5th werewolf week, even though it's technically going to be into the next month. So look forward to that. But this has been Ginger Snap, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.